there.
This is mine. I thought the cleaner lost it.
I told you the cleaner lost it. I took it. I needed something to go with my black suit.
They were too old for television, too irrelevant for prime time, and too disposable for Hollywood. These words didn't come from a spiteful critic, but from an NBC executive in 1985, referring to 4 women who were about to completely change the rules of the game. Betty White, Bea Arthur, Rue McClanahan, and Estelle Getty weren't just actresses facing Hollywood's brutal ageism. They were warriors preparing for a battle no one expected them to win. What happened behind the scenes of Golden Girls between 1985 and 1992 was much more than the production of a sitcom. It was a silent revolution waged by women Hollywood had discarded against a system that insisted on making them invisible. And the truth is more shocking than you imagined. Are you enjoying this story? Golden Girls. Then help the channel grow. Look, 94.8% of the people who watch these videos are still not subscribed to the channel. If you're part of that group, take the chance and subscribe right now. It's free, and that way you'll keep receiving amazing stories from TV shows that we still miss a lot. Oh, and don't forget, at the end of the video, you'll find more stories like this one, when Susan Harris created Golden Girls. She wasn't just writing a comedy about 4 mature women sharing a house in Miami. She was declaring war against decades of television programming that treated women over 50 as asexual, irrelevant beings, worthy only of roles as caring grandmothers or nosy neighbors. The premise was simple and revolutionary. 4 divorced and widowed women living their lives fully, talking openly about sex, relationships, politics, and aging without apologizing. Brandon Tartikoff, NBC's president at the time, hated the idea immediately. "Nobody wants to see old ladies on television," he declared in an executive meeting that almost buried the project before it even began. But there was something Tartikoff didn't know. The first secret of Golden Girls was in its very existence. The pilot only aired because NBC was desperate for content and had a hole in their Saturday night programming. Nobody was betting on that show. Nobody except Paul Witt and Tony Thomas, the producers who saw in Susan Harris not just a brilliant screenwriter, but a visionary willing to challenge all conventions. The casting seemed obvious on paper, but it was a minefield of tensions from day one. Betty White was the first to be cast, but not for the role of Rose Neeland, the sweet and naive Southerner. She was slated to play Blanche Devereaux, the sexually uninhibited man-eater. The problem? Betty White had just played the promiscuous Sue Ann Nivens on the Mary Tyler Moore Show, and the producers feared the audience couldn't separate her from that character. The solution came from a bold switch. Rue McClanahan, originally chosen for Rose, would swap roles with Betty. It was a decision that would change everything, but almost cost the show before they even started filming. Bea Arthur initially turned down the role of Dorothy Zbornak 3 times. She was tired of sitcoms after the smashing success of Maude and didn't want to return to the format. What made her change her mind was a personal call from Susan Harris, revealing something that was never made public until years later. Dorothy was written specifically with Bea in mind, as a love letter to her sharp intelligence and commanding presence. "I wasn't writing a character," Susan confessed in an interview years later. "I was writing Bea being Bea." Estelle Getty, the youngest of the cast at 62, played Sophia Petrillo, Dorothy's 80-year-old mother, in one of television's greatest makeup tricks. But there was a secret the production jealously guarded for years. Estelle suffered from paralyzing stage fright that almost made her abandon the role after the first tapings. She constantly forgot lines, panicked before each scene, and cried during breaks. The cast formed a protective circle around her, with Bea Arthur rehearsing all scenes dozens of extra times with Estelle, and Betty White creating secret encouragement codes they used on set to calm her down. This act of female solidarity never leaked to the press during the years of production. The first season of Golden Girls premiered in September 1985 with modest numbers. But something extraordinary was happening. Women of all ages began tuning in, mesmerized by seeing their own lives reflected on screen in a way they had never experienced. The show didn't treat its protagonists as pitiful relics or objects of ridicule. They were funny, intelligent, sexually active, and absolutely refused to disappear quietly as society expected them to. But this created an unexpected problem. Hollywood didn't know how to sell advertisers on a program starring old women. Cosmetics brands refused to buy ad space, arguing their target audience didn't watch the show. Car companies claimed older women didn't make purchasing decisions. NBC faced a silent rebellion from advertisers who couldn't see the value of a mature female audience. The second secret of Golden Girls was in how the production responded. They began obsessively collecting demographic data, proving episode after episode that women over 50 controlled trillions in purchasing power. It was a war of numbers that eventually forced Madison Avenue to reevaluate decades of age prejudice. Inside the set, tensions were of a completely different nature. Bea Arthur and Betty White, despite their impeccable on-screen chemistry, maintained an icy professional relationship off-camera. Bea was meticulous, rehearsed obsessively, and demanded everyone arrive prepared and on time. Betty improvised, made jokes between takes, and had an effervescent energy that Bea considered unprofessional. They were oil and water, a director revealed years later, but in front of the cameras, that tension created a dynamic you can't fake. What few know is that there was a nearly fatal breaking point in the third year. During the filming of a particularly emotional episode, Bea exploded at Betty in front of the entire cast and crew, accusing her of not taking the work seriously. Betty, ever the consummate professional, simply walked off the set without saying a word. Production stopped for 3 days. What reconciled them was Rue McClanahan, who locked them both in a dressing room and refused to let them out until they resolved their differences. They emerged hours later, not as friends, but with a mutual respect forged in the understanding that they were stronger together. Rue McClanahan faced her own demons. She was in the middle of her 4th troubled marriage during the early seasons and frequently arrived on set with swollen eyes from crying. Blanche Devereaux, the confident and sexually liberated character she played, was the complete opposite of how Rue felt in her personal life. "I wore Blanche like armor," she confessed years later. "It was the only time of day I felt powerful." The cast knew this and created an environment of absolute protection. When Rue finally divorced in 1986, it was Betty, Bea, and Estelle who helped her rebuild her life, proving that the friendship they portrayed on screen had deeper roots than the public imagined. The episode that changed everything aired in February 1990. Scared, Straight addressed AIDS in a way no other mainstream show had dared. Rose Nyland discovers she may have been infected through a blood transfusion, and the episode treats with dignity and nuance not just the disease, but the devastating stigma surrounding it. NBC tried to prevent the broadcast, fearing backlash from advertisers and conservative groups. Susan Harris threatened to leave the show. The cast supported her as a bloc, with Bea Arthur making personal calls to network executives. The episode aired and received millions of letters from viewers thanking them for finally seeing AIDS treated with humanity. It was the moment Golden Girls transcended entertainment and became cultural activism. But the price of that boldness was high. Estelle Getty was silently fighting the first signs of the dementia that would eventually consume her. By the 6th season, she could no longer memorize lines and used teleprompters hidden throughout the set. The cast and crew conspired to protect her, rewriting scenes to accommodate her limitations without ever revealing to the studio what was happening. It was Bea Arthur who finally made the impossible decision, announcing she would leave the show after the 7th season, not due to creative differences or exhaustion, but because she knew Estelle couldn't continue and refused to allow her colleague to be publicly humiliated. Golden Girls ended in 1992, not because it had exhausted stories, But because one woman chose to protect another's dignity, the legacy of Golden Girls goes far beyond the laughs and memorable episodes. These four women proved that stories about aging could be commercially viable, culturally relevant, and artistically excellent. They opened doors for generations of mature actresses who would no longer have to disappear at 50. Are you enjoying this story? Golden Girls? Then help the channel grow. Look, 94.8% of the people who watch these videos are still not subscribed to the channel. If you're part of that group, take the chance and subscribe right now. It's free, and that way you'll keep receiving amazing stories from TV shows that we still miss a lot. Oh, and don't forget, at the end of the video, you'll find more stories like this one. More importantly, they showed that older women had complex, multifaceted stories worthy of being told. Susan Harris summed it up best. We weren't trying to make history. We were just insisting that women of all ages deserve to be seen. And thanks to four warriors who refused to be invisible, now they are.